Related development, more than a dozen countries have condemned Israel after its forces fired near a convoy of foreign diplomats visiting the Jenin refugee camp in the occupied West Bank. The diplomats, who included officials from the EU, UK, China, Russia and several other nations, were part of a coordinated visit to assess the humanitarian situation. Israel said troops fired warning shots after the group deviated from a pre-agreed route, though diplomats dispute this, saying no clear warning was issued. While no one was hurt, global reaction has been swift. European powers, including France, Germany and the United Kingdom, have summoned Israeli ambassadors and demanded explanations. Canada called the incident totally unacceptable, and countries like Ireland, Turkey and Egypt accuse Israel of violating diplomatic norms and international law. Let's listen in to what the Canadian Prime Minister had to say, and the EU Foreign Policy Chief.
We expect a full investigation. We expect a immediate explanation of what happened. It's totally unacceptable. We are conscious that we have an ability, if we so choose, to complete the Golden Dome with investments and partnership. And it's something that we are looking at and something that has been discussed at.
We definitely call on Israel to investigate this incident and also hold these accountable who are responsible for this, and any threats on diplomats' lives are unacceptable. As Israel is also a signatory to Vienna Convention, has the right, the obligation to guarantee the security of all.
Many cited the Vienna Convention, which guarantees the safety of diplomatic personnel. Norway, Portugal and Mexico emphasised that firing near clearly marked diplomatic convoys is a grave breach of that treaty. The Palestinian Authority called the act a heinous crime and said the diplomats were there to witness the aftermath of Israeli military operations in Jenin. Since January, Israeli forces have been conducting a major crackdown in the West Bank, which the UN says has displaced tens of thousands and left over 100 Palestinians dead. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Israel's military has crushed refugee camps in the occupied West Bank. Here's what he said in his press briefing.
נדמה לי במחצית השנה האחרונה אנחנו עשינו משהו שלא נעשה אף פעם. אנחנו נכנסנו גם לא ב-2003. אנחנו נכנסנו 2002. אנחנו נכנסנו בחומת מגן, כן? אנחנו נכנסנו סימולטנית למחנות הפליטים המובילים, פשוט ריסקנו אותם. והדבר הזה הביא לירידה סטטיסטית מאוד משמעותית בפיגועים, אבל זה לא משנה.
On the other hand, the Israeli military expressed regret for the inconvenience, but the fallout continues to escalate. Leaders from around the world are now calling for a thorough investigation and accountability, warning that any harm to diplomats undermines international order. We're now joined by our guest today, Dr. Punsara Amarasinghe, who's at the Koltawala Defence University, located in Colombo. Thank you very much, Dr. Amarasinghe, for joining us on the programme. I want to first start in the Gaza Strip, where Benjamin Netanyahu has said that he will let these aid trucks through in order to prevent a humanitarian crisis. These trucks are facing logistical problems getting through. We've had reports of some of them getting through today. However, he says that he only wants to let these trucks in to preserve Israel's allies. Can I get your analysis of this situation that's been going on for a couple of days now, this rising criticism of Israel from its top Western alliances?
Yeah, actually that can be taken as a sense of optimism as Netanyahu stepped down from his vehement position towards Gaza, because yesterday, for the first time since last December, Netanyahu held a press briefing allowing the journalists to ask questions, where he clearly stated that he reiterated the idea of total elimination of Hamas at the end of the Israeli military offensive, but emphasized the fact that Israel is willing to go for not a permanent, but a temporary ceasefire. Temporary ceasefire allowing the humanitarian aid to be conducted for the preservation of the faith of the Israeli allies. I mean, that could be accepted. At the same time, we have to view that from the point of view of the greatest, enormous pressure bestowed upon Israelis for the past few days. You can clearly see the international community has been quite critical towards Israelis' policy towards Gaza. Mainly Canada, United Kingdom, and France have made joint statements. And in the morning, the Uruguay summoned Israeli ambassador. So Uruguay happened to be the second country to summon Israeli ambassador after UK did. So there is a kind of a huge, enormous pressure going on against Israel. And even within Israel, you can see the left wing, the political parties are rallying around Tel Aviv, not demonstrating and advocating their voices against the military machinery of Netanyahu, saying that if this continues to grow, Israel is likely to be a pariah state, as what exactly happened to South Africa a few decades ago. So the voice coming from Israeli, the prime minister, seems to be quite an optimistic move towards not a permanent, but a temporary ceasefire.
Yes, and Dr. Omarasinghe, this has obviously spiraled in the last couple of days, but this blockade, which is causing a lot of controversy, has been going on for 11 weeks. This is the thing that has had diplomats and leaders raise their voices of concern about this situation. And we obviously have to also talk about the situation where diplomats from countries including UK, EU and China and Russia were fired upon in the West Bank, warning shots. Is Israel facing a diplomatic tipping point, do you think?
Yes. From a vantage point of view, you have to understand Israel is a party to Vienna Convention of the diplomatic treaty, the diplomatic immunity and the diplomatic privileges. So the Article 16 of this particular treaty clearly states that the host country has an obligation to take care of the well-being of the diplomats. So if Israel continues, if Israel involves in these kind of actors deliberately or maybe unwillingly, that can be taken as a blatant violation of public international law. So in that context, so there is a huge, the pressure at the same time, moral dilemma upon Israel to adhere to at least several norms of international law by providing the adequate protection for the diplomatic community, diplomats who are visiting Israel, who are trying to help the Gazan in this moral crisis.
Yes, Dr. Omarasinghe, just one final question. Prime Minister Netanyahu has not been silent about the fact that he wants Israel to take over the entire Gaza Strip, or at least have it under Israeli military control. What are the potential ramifications of this in regards to the regional stability of the Middle East? We obviously see the Houthis firing upon Israel in solidarity with the Palestinians. What are the ramifications of doing this, a Palestinian territory?
That's a pretty good question. So if you look at the history of the brief history of the conflict, the Netanyahu had never been a critique of Hamas. When Netanyahu was in power in 2005, even before that, he consistently supported Hamas because he simply wanted to have a proxy war by dividing the Palestinian aspiration, the aspiration for a separate state. So while supporting Hamas, he wanted to isolate Mohammed Abbas's Palestinian Authority by coming to the mainstream, which he accomplished, but it finally boomerang upon Israel in 2023. Now Netanyahu has a vision to eliminate Hamas. So from a theoretical point of view, you can quite see that the IDF has partially achieved what it wanted to achieve from this military offensive. All the top-class Hamas leaders are being eliminated. Yahya Sinwar is gone. And you can see Ismail Hania is gone. Mohammed Deif, the mastermind, the architect behind the 7th of October massacre, is dead and gone. And even the current leader is presumed to be dead. But what is next? The next thing that Netanyahu is well aware of the fact that even after eliminating all these leaders, if the land remains to be left alone, definitely Hamas will pop up again. The Hamas will back to normal. So from a military point of view, IDF simply wants to finish the task what it started several months ago. So if IDF completely assimilates the Gaza Strip to the mainland, to Israel territory, so then that is likely to be a long-lasting regional stability for the security architecture in the Middle East.
Dr. Pansara Amarasinghe, thank you very much for your insight.